I have decided I want to live my best spooky season life over the next few weeks, so that is exactly what I'm going to be doing. I have many a fun thing planned through the books that I'm reading, the film and TV that I want to be watching throughout spooky season, and also the activities that I'm going to be doing as well. So I thought I'd talk to you about the books first, because I have a 4-book TBR for this vlog. First up is the book that I am currently reading, which is Christina Henry's Good Girls Don't Die. This is a horror that is following multiple different horror tropes, which I'm really enjoying. I find horror tropes absolutely fascinating. They're both incredibly predictable and also can completely flip the trope upside down and go at it at a totally different angle. And I love the surprise element that is within that with horror, and Christina Henry is doing a very interesting job of bringing these tropes to light in her writing and also tackling them in a different way, where she's kind of observing the fact that yes, these are horror tropes and the characters are aware of that as well. So this book is following 3 different women who are in 3 different parts of this story. At the moment, those parts haven't overlapped. So we've had about 100 pages for the first woman, 100 pages for the second, and I'm in the middle of the third woman's journey at the moment. So I assume, again, around 100 pages for her journey. So it feels like kind of 3 different short stories at the moment that are gonna entangle together, and I'm very intrigued to see how that happens. The first woman is in a situation where she wakes up in a life that she doesn't believe is hers and is trying to understand where she is and who she is. The second woman is taken to a cabin in the woods and a slasher-esque scenario ends up happening. The third woman's being taken to a Hunger Games style arena where she's being faced with a series of challenges that she has to be able to get through to get out of the arena alive. So we've got these 3 different women's stories. There's something not quite right about all of them. There's this awareness from the women themselves that something isn't right. And we're slowly, I think, finding out bits as to why it's not right. There's been a couple of little hints trickled along. I am very, very invested in this. Really, really enjoying this. In fact, enjoying it so much that I have also added another Christina Henry book to the TBR for this video, because this is just so, so good. So if you want something very addictive, I can't stop reading this. I was about just under halfway through yesterday, and then last night binged 100 pages in one sitting because it's just so addictive. The way that it ends each of the women's chapters as well, or each of the women's parts, is very clever as well. So yeah, having a great time with that one. The other Christina Henry I've added to the list is The House That Horror Built. This is following somebody who is a real horror film lover, and she has a job cleaning the house of somebody who was a revered horror director. And in doing this, she ends up hearing some strange noises in the house, and I guess some strange things start happening. Again, I love anything that kind of plays into knowing it's in a trope and also has that meta element of somebody that already really enjoys horror in it, which again, this one also does. There's acknowledgement from the characters that they enjoy different mystery horror elements in their personal life, through the books they're reading and things. So it's kind of interesting the way that it's taken that angle. I also have The Last Word by Taylor Adams on this list. This looks like it's going to be a bit more of a fun, silly time. This is following somebody who leaves a 1-star review for a horror book, and off the back of that, some bad shit starts happening to them. It sounds like it's just going to be a little bit ridiculous. The bottom line of the blurb says this is a fight between author and reader who will have the last word. I just think this is going to be ridiculous. The tagline on the front says, if you give this book a 1-star review, you might end up dead. So I think that's going to be a fun time. The other book that I've just started as an audiobook is I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones. This is following our main character who goes to a party and everything beyond that point in his life changes. Now, I feel like I can't really talk properly about this without entering into potential spoiler territory, because the blurb keeps it pretty vague. So I don't know what's good to say and what isn't. But basically, he is in a situation that's very much wrong place, wrong time, that then throws his future completely out of whack, and he's narrating it with this kind of omniscient voice as to what's happening with it, and it's quite an interesting narration style. There's a little bit of humour to it as well, which I'm quite enjoying, so I'm having a good time with that one so far. So this is the TBR for the next few weeks, and it kind of has a bit of a colour scheme to it. Horror books like to put the blood red on the cover, don't they? They like to lean into that, which, makes sense being horror books. Next week I'm going to Tully's Farm's Shocktober event, which I am so excited for. It's a scare fest event thing. I've never been before, but I've heard very good things, so I think that should be perfect for spooky season. Halloween is also fast approaching, where I intend to sit on this sofa and watch a load of horror films. My partner and I have made an annual tradition accidentally of sitting and watching like 3 or 4 horror films on Halloween and getting Chinese takeaway, so I think that is what we're going to do this year again. I am very excited. I love this time of year so much. I also did my horror book shopping in Oxford video yesterday, so I have a load of new horror books to add to my TBR, so just generally I am ready to be fueled by my horror reading over the next few weeks. I have reading updates. I have started a new book. I finished Good Girls Don't Die. Let's talk about this one first. So, the plot of this, following 3 different women in 3 different scenarios that they've been put into, that are these horrible situations. They know it's not quite right, and we get each of their perspectives in their situations, and then we kind of get a merge together of them all. I adored this. I have given this a 5 out of 5 stars. I need to read everything from Christina Henry right now. I read her book Alice like years and years and years ago, and I didn't love it as much as I wanted to, but this one absolutely adored and definitely want to read more from Christina Henry. So, thoughts, final feelings on this. I thought that this was absolutely fascinating in terms of how it approached the horror genre, because it had that meta element of the acknowledgement of the genre from the characters that were in the scenarios that they were in. They were each in a different horrible thing happening to them, especially like the middle scenario, which was a cabin in the woods, and she was very much like a horror fan and liked that kind of trope in horror films, to be then put in that situation. I mean, each of these women all liked reading the types of stories that they were then put into, which was just really interesting in itself. But I just think it really acknowledged the genre in a really interesting way, because the thing about horror is it's so tropey and it's so directional because of that, that when the characters in it know those tropes and those directions, it changes the dynamic of the story and the way that they interact with the narrative as well, because they can already have that idea of what's going on. They already know kind of the direction that it could go in if it was following that typical trope and plot. So that kind of flips everything up on its head. But also I think this was so clever because this was also a story about men trying to control women and women's responses to men doing that, and men's expectations of women and how they view women. And it really dug deep into that throughout each of these women's stories, and then through the way that they all come together as well. And I think that's such an interesting thing, because as a big part of horror is the way that men and women are represented differently within the genre, especially when you look at like more classic trope horror. And this really got into that in a really interesting way and really showed a very dark side towards that element of control and towards the entitlement that the men in this feel that they have. And I think that whilst it presented these 3 different scary situations for the women, the scariest was the fact that the men were acting the way they were acting and just thinking that that was fine. So I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars, not only for just the general brilliant plot and intrigue, but just the writing style as well, the characters, everything about this completely kept me captivated throughout. I was so intrigued to see what would happen when these stories knitted together, and so intrigued by each of the characters individually as well. I absolutely loved it. So I have now started The Last Word, and I'm nearing the halfway point in this. I binge read a lot of this yesterday. I am completely hooked. I went into this thinking it would be kind of maybe a bit spoofy almost, because we're following a character who leaves a 1-star review for a horror book and then she ends up getting haunted after doing so. And I kind of thought it would take like a kind of silly jovial approach, but it actually hasn't, and it's just doing it in a completely different way to what I expected, but in a fantastic way. It's also very clever as a book in the way that it's advertising itself, because something I noticed is it's got reviews on the back, but they don't have listed who's reviewing it. It's just got 5-star reviews. And you quite quickly see that the book that our main character is reviewing has a similar amount of anonymous reviews, and our main character questions that, and I think that's a really clever idea to put these on the back, because obviously upon picking this book up and just looking at it, you have no idea of that. So it's interesting how a reader that hasn't read this yet will perceive it just from the cover of it and the blurb. But yeah, I'm completely hooked. This has given me goosebumps. I have literally been like reading this like this because of how stressed I have been about certain situations that are happening. I have different theories going around in my head. There is so much action, so much is happening. One thing, the main character really likes reading like thrillery crime novels on her Kindle, and she like gets through them like 3 a day or something, and she just reads them at like 4-hour stints. And she's kind of in an isolated situation, and that's what she's spending a lot of her time doing. And like, props to her for reading so many. But whenever I read about somebody who is a quick reader, or whenever I watch like reading vlogs and things of people talking about books, it just makes me want to read more. Like, it's a contagious feeling to just want to pick up as many books as possible. So I think that in itself is making me tear through this as well, because it's just so addictive. It's incredibly compelling. I am incredibly intrigued as to where it's going to go. It's definitely taken a very clever spin to the kind of isolated threat horror that this has gone down the route of, and again, a kind of meta one, because the main character has read a horror book, has left the review, and then kind of sees elements of that horror book coming into her story. So she's kind of got that, again, almost omniscient observation of what's already happened in the book that then could happen to her and her narrative. So also very interesting. Really enjoying this one so far. Tomorrow we've got Tully's Farm, and I'm so excited. We need a reading catch-up. We also need a catch-up on Tully's Shocktober, because oh my gosh, that was so good. I didn't film as much as I thought I would, because honestly I just got so swept away in it. I didn't really know what to expect from this. Like, my partner and I are both saying we didn't know if it would be something that felt really overhyped, but oh my gosh, it was so good. If you have the opportunity to go, if you like that kind of scare experience, like, it's kind of like Thorpe Park's Fright Nights and Alton Towers Scarefest, like that kind of vibe, but like so intense. There are various different scare mazes scattered around this farm, and scare experiences. They're called mazes. It's not like you have to find multiple ways out, like it guides you around where you need to go, but it like has that kind of lost feeling of a maze. But oh my gosh, it was so good. There were so many different themes. Some of our favorites was Coven 13, which was witch themed. That was so cool and so weird. I tried to film in there, but this is the best clip that I could get to try and demonstrate it. I was also like trying to pay attention to everything, because there was like this huge, like, I don't even know how to describe it, airbags around you that you were walking through, and then there was like this strobe lighting to give this mist effect, and then there were witches in the strobe lighting. So you're trying to like push through these airbags. These witches are coming at you. It's like intense. It was so good. Before going into that room, there was a room with such thick fog that you could barely see the person in front of you. And just generally, it just plays with your senses so much. Like the effort of walking through the airbags and everything. You couldn't run, you couldn't move any faster than like a snail's pace pretty much, because it was so difficult to get through. And just the whole atmosphere of that was so good. There was also one called The Penitentiary, which was a prison with inmates that you had to like walk through the prison cells of, and it was intense strobe lighting and things. Like, it was so well done. The production value on all of it was epic. They had actors running around the park as well. Everyone's there because they want to get scared, and you could see the actors interacting with people and people like reacting different ways to that. It was so fun. It was so fun. I highly recommend it. We definitely want to go again. We didn't get a chance to go into every maze, but we got to go into like 5, I think. I can't remember how many there actually were available, but we did over half of them, and we really, really enjoyed what we did. So that was so much fun. Really, really enjoyed, and just like generally a very good autumnal Halloween activity. The books that I'm currently reading, I finished last night The Last Word. I've given this a 4 out of 5 stars. Totally not, you know, anything spurred on by the fact that the character in this gives a book a 1-star review and gets haunted. No, I did really like it. It was highly clever. Again, another meta approach to horror, which is certainly something I'm leaning into, as you can probably see from the theme of the books that I'm picking for this vlog. I can't even begin to like describe how clever this is. I don't want to like infringe on any spoiler territory, but the acknowledgement of the kind of publishing and reviewing industry in this is really interesting, because obviously it's centric initially around this 1-star, the review that's been left, and it kind of touches on the importance of reviews, why reviews are there, who reviews are for, i.e. the readers, and the rights of readers to leave those reviews. And it kind of talks about that kind of thing, and then just spirals into this extreme like haunting thriller experience that this character is going through. I did not know where this was going to go. Like, constantly I was on the edge of my seat. The narration style kind of varies, which again I won't go into too much detail of, but you're kind of getting 2 different main styles of narration that makes it really interesting and incredibly gripping. I just didn't know where I stood with so much of this book. I was completely like on the edge of my seat, like reading it like this, and just absolutely addicted. It was like, it definitely is a horror, but it certainly sits within like the horror thriller genre, because it was just so intense. For like the last 150 pages, I did not know where things were going. Very much enjoyed getting fed little bits of information about this character, because you knew there was some unspoken things about her that we didn't know much more information about, that we were slowly getting more and more fed to us for her characterization and growing who she was. And that was really interesting. That kept me very intrigued as to what she was keeping to herself, and what other characters' involvements with that was, and how the other characters were involved in this overarching story. This is a small cast of characters, but it's so intense. It's so good. Really, really enjoyed this. And I'm so glad I did, because I genuinely, when I bought this last year, I remember thinking like, this one feels more spoofy, and I just didn't know if it would be spoofier or if it would be like what it was, which was a very clever take on horror. It was incredibly clever. It was incredibly thrilling. It had the horror elements perfectly, and it kept me on my toes, it kept me guessing, so I had a great time with this and gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I haven't spoken about my audiobook yet, I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones. I can't work out how I feel about this one. I don't know that I'm going to be able to finish this within this vlog, because I've kind of slowed down my listening for it, because it just feels like it's become very disjointed with the narrative. And I don't know if that's a deliberate choice, or if it's just maybe the way I'm experiencing the audiobook, but every time I start listening to the audiobook, it feels like it's a completely different point to when I left off. It isn't. Like, I can see it's literally like, you know, there's nothing wrong with the audiobook. I just feel like narrative-wise, it feels like it's jumping around so much that maybe as an audiobook this wasn't the best choice, and maybe this would be more enjoyable if I physically read it. I'm not sure. I'm going to keep listening to it. I'm going to see what I think, but this actually is a kind of similar feeling to how I felt about My Heart is a Chainsaw, which was the other Stephen Graham Jones book that I read and didn't love. I remember feeling like I was really enjoying it to start with, which is how I was feeling about this one. I was really intrigued to start with about how the story was being set up. And then once it got rolling about halfway through, I felt like I was struggling a little bit more with following it for some reason, but I don't know why. Like, I can't put my finger on why, and that's the same reason I'm feeling, or what I'm feeling with this one. I really can't put my finger on what it is. but I'm just finding myself, I don't know, it just feels like when I'm listening to it, it's all over the place with stuff and I'm just not quite being able to grab onto what the story is. So I don't know, maybe I just need some like dedicated sitting, listening audiobook time and just to see how I feel about this. But that's kind of my current thoughts about this. I don't know, I feel very torn with it, but I am going to be starting my final physical read for this vlog next, which is Christina Henry's The House That Horror Built. So I'm about halfway through The House That Horror Built. It is Halloween tomorrow, so I'm going to be settling down with this for a little bit and also watching a load of horror films. Enjoying this very much so far. We have a very interesting power dynamic between our main character Harry and the man that she works for. He's a horror film director and there's this kind of element of stardom surrounding him, but she's noticing some strange things, but there's this real power dynamic between them and this balance of power as well that she feels really uncomfortable with. So I'm very intrigued to see how this continues to play out, and still very much enjoying Christina Henry's writing style in this book as well. Happy Halloween! I have drawn a little spider on my cheek, but I realise you can't really see it on the camera, so if you think what the hell's that, it's a Halloween spider. Obviously. Also, happy New Music Day to any Florence and the Machine fans. I've listened to the album twice already, very much enjoying it, very much anticipating the arrival of my vinyl in the post later today. Also, I have finished my final book of the vlog, The House That Horror Built by Christina Henry. Very much enjoyed this one with the element of the horror film references and things, but didn't quite so much love it on the spooky vibes. I thought it would be spookier. I've given this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Comparing this to Good Girls Don't Die, which I obviously read earlier in the vlog and is also a Christina Henry book, I enjoyed that one better because I think I liked the different types of storylines we had going on and the anticipation of what was happening, whereas this felt like I wasn't quite building the anticipation as much as I was just observing these characters and their interactions with each other. It felt like it was more centric around the characters and their relationships with each other and the strange power dynamics that were happening with those characters than it was so much about the haunting element. The haunting element was certainly there and the suspense was there. It had a little bit of American Horror Story Season 1 gimp mask suit vibes, if you have seen American Horror Story Season 1. We're currently in the middle of a rewatch of that at the moment. It's very fresh in my brain and it kind of had that element to it with the way that the haunting was happening, but it didn't grip me as much as the other did. What I did really like about this is the horror references. I loved that. I loved the fact that we had this director of horror films that was very revered director and was very respected by the people in this book, and that he was the one that had something strange happening. So there was this power dynamic struggle between him and the main character because he's her employer, but also because he just holds this status with all the other characters that they feel they can't really challenge him on things and that they just kind of have to ignore certain things. So it kind of plays into the mystery element there, which was interesting, which is why I say that it was more focused on the character relationships than it felt like the actual spooky element was secondary to that kind of, which is interesting because it's a different kind of take than Good Girls Don't Die, which was a little bit more blatantly like about the fear element and why that fear element had been concocted for those women. Loved that we got references for not only fictional horror films but also real horror films as well, and that was like, there's just a clear passion and love of horror I think coming from Christina Henry and clear understanding of the genre in the various books that I've read by her, and I just think that that clearly shines through so well in her writing, but also like in the subject matters that she chooses to discuss within the writing as well. So I really liked that, and I really liked the confusion of the characters throughout this and the kind of questioning of what was going on constantly by our main character and her lack of trust of the situation and always just kind of doubting that next thing, because it throws the seed of doubt into your mind as to who you should be trusting and who's reliable and who isn't, which I think is always a fun way to take the plot. I did enjoy this one. I just didn't find it as scary as I was hoping to be. I really thought it would lean more heavily into the haunted house, which it was, but I'd say it was more like 30-40% haunted house and then the rest was more like about the characters' individual stories and what was happening with them. The haunted element was certainly unsettling. I will say that when it was focusing on it, it was certainly unsettling imagery that was created. So, you know, did a good job of that. And Christina Henry's writing is just fantastic. So 3.5 out of 5 stars for this one. I'm definitely not going to be finishing I Was a Teenage Slasher in this vlog, given that I'm wrapping up the vlog today, but I will keep listening to that one because I am quite intrigued. I said I wasn't sure because I felt like very disjointed with it, but I'm intrigued enough, I think, to keep listening and find out what direction it takes. The spooky season plans for the rest of the day involve finishing American Horror Story Season 1, watching last night's Traitors episode, which isn't specifically spooky season, but I guess kind of half falls under that category. And we're basically just going to sit and binge a load of horror films today, get a Chinese takeaway, which has somehow accidentally become an annual tradition that we do at Halloween. I think we started it like 3-4 years ago and have just been doing it ever since. So that, load of horror films, hopefully later on going for a walk when it gets dark to see everybody's Halloween decorations, and probably listening to the new Florence and the Machine album a couple more times. It's a little bit unpleasant.